Let's keep our focus on Glebelands now. Hiring a hitman is easy due to their relative availability. That's according to former journalist and author Nathi Olifant. Olifant's the author of Blood, Blades and Bullets, Glebelands Hitmen, a book detailing the dark world of the gunmen who operated at the Glebelands Hostel in Umlazi in Durban. Olifant joins us now virtually from Durban. Nathi, thank you so much for your time. When one could finally get details about what life was like inside Glebelands, I don't think anybody not living inside that could almost believe the world that was created inside that hostel, where the laws, whether social or legal, that we live by meant absolutely nothing. And we heard more of it coming out in this court case, which has now come to a point. What did you make of this court case, and what do you make of the fears now expressed by the families and survivors of that violence who fear that we haven't seen the end of it?
Good evening to you and the listeners, viewers at home. Thanks for having me. You know what came from this court case is such horrendous, I think one perhaps could have scratched the surface, in trying to detail what is happening in that hostel. The details are horrifying, grueling, harrowing, to say the least. And this has been the life of the resident of that hostel, for the past decade or so. That's what they've been living under. And for those details to emerge, is such horrifying. But the most sad part is the involvement of law enforcement agencies in some of these cases, as evidence in the Glebelands H in Pietermaritzburg, because one of the accused and convicted, was a cop. It just shows that they've been operating with impunity for a number of years until the cops really come into close. But I still believe that not much has been done. I know there are seeds that have been planted in that hostel that are going to germinate, for future. So we need to nip this in the bud and for everyone to feel safe living there in those units.
From what you understand about how the network works, Glebelands is, of course, seen as this headquarter of sorts, but that network goes far beyond those walls of the hostel, doesn't it? And the decisions that are made, events that unfolded inside Glebelands, the impact of which was felt far further than just at Glebelands and right across the province, wasn't it?
You are correct. In fact, what is said is that the law enforcement is go after the shooters, but the real kingpins who control, the assassins, who contract them, who recruit them from these rural areas and plunge them into that hostel, groom them for a number of years, because they don't start big, they start small, maybe killing a taxi driver or maybe a local mama, a local, man, then it grows. So for me, the details that come, in fact, the details that I investigated, that are in my book, they paint a picture of a place that is plunged into darkness, a place where people languish without any hope that there'll be anything, salvation coming their way. But this is just the beginning and the start. And until we do something about those who handle these people, because it's professional people who live in affluent areas, who run these networks, recruit these young boys, groom them, obviously aided with by some of the rock cops that we have in the police service. So it's a network of criminals that operates with impunity, as I said earlier on, and until we do something, nothing is going to happen at all.
Now, in your book, Blood, Blades and Bullets, it focuses on what you call a naive school dropout teenager from rural Nongoma, Mazwi Nkumalo. How difficult was it for you to ensure that your story was authentic? How difficult was it to reach the story? And how common was the story of Mazwi Nkumalo as you were doing your research and the various stories you were coming across?
It is very common. It required me to speak to the victims and the perpetrators. I'm saying the victims because most of these young boys recruited in the rural areas are victims. Most of them, they don't even have birth certificates, they don't even have IDs or any online profile to begin with. So tell me, for a detective trying to piece together the pieces, you've got fingerprints, but they can't be read because somebody's not in the system, so it grows all the way. So I had to speak to the hitmen themselves. I had to spend some time at Glebelands Hostel speaking to victims and perpetrators, and also speak to some that have been incarcerated, just like one in Waterval prison, up in Utrecht. So I had to speak to all those to make the story authentic and to bring the story to life, for people to breathe into it and be able to, associate. Some of them associate with it, some of them it resonates with what has happened to their family, because a number of families have been ranked apart. You speak of Mtembo family in Glebelands, whose father and husband, was taken in brutality. You speak of Sipondovela, who was shot right inside the magistrate court in Umlazi.
Sure.
So all those things are harrowing, and this is how they do it. They know that they can go in broad daylight inside the magistrate court and shoot someone and get away with it. So it's one of those things that I had to look into, and how they operate, how they live. They live normally among us. They are the most gentlest of gentlemen. But what they do, during the dark hours, is something
Sure.
that is harrowing.
Do you think it's fair to say that a lot of people who ended up within these networks, especially the runners, the soldiers, I suppose you could call them, for want of a better word, they've been let down by the system, many of them, as you mentioned there, but then also find themselves being taken advantage of the system. If you look at who the kingpins are, I mean, this former police officer, Beku Kwazi Mdweshu, from what you understand and from the stories that we heard during that inquiry that took place many years ago, this was a reign of terror that was being overseen by the men in blue, as it were. Were you ever fearful when you were talking to these individuals? Were you ever fearful of your life? Because, like you said, it's the brazenness of how a lot of these individuals operated that really was the most shocking.
Naturally, you come across those moments where you look over your shoulder, suspiciously, and think, am I being also followed by this? But to answer your question too, it's a combination of social factors that have let down these young boys. They are born into poverty, to destitute families. Sometimes, you go to social development, you'll find that there are still children that are not registered, and they are in their late teens. Some of them have even dropped from school because they can't get IDs and all. Some decide to go to job bank to look for jobs and employment opportunities. And this is where they get vulnerable, because there are always people lurking around. They know that if they use them, it's difficult to trace, who these people are, because, as I said, they have no fingerprints, they have no birth certificate, no ID, no online profile. Even the technology that reads faces, cameras, in our cities, they can't read their faces because they're not there to begin with, So it becomes a bit of a challenge for law enforcement agencies. But the most disturbing thing is that is when the cops also are into it, that they get their cut. Say someone a bounty is out for 400,000, a cop will have a 30% cut in that.
Sure.
So those are all the things that needs to be addressed and needs to be confronted by everyone who's concerned about the safety of our society.
So your book, Blood, Blades and Bullets, is part of a series. There was also The Fugitives, part of the Glebelands Hitmen series. Plans for any more, Nathi?
Yes, there is a plan for the third one, because I'm working on a trilogy, of the
Sure.
Glebelands Hitmen series. So I explore a number of subjects. It's murder, it's the traditional use of muti, the use of nyangas, because they go to these people to cleanse themselves, say after a hit, or to strengthen themselves before hitting someone. So as I said, if I say it's a combination of factors, everybody's into it. Traditional healers, sangomas, they're into it. They soak their weapons in muti and in concoction overnight, just to make the gun, work properly, or so they believe. I'm not in a position to, to make, especially on that. They lace their bullets in venomous, venom that is fresh from Mozambique, venomous snakes, and you have to shoot it at a short range. Even if you survive a bullet, you can't survive the venom that gets into your
Wow.
system. So it's how it works.
Gosh, what a complex story, and more to come. A former journalist and author, Nathi Olifant, he's the author of the Glebelands Hitmen series, Blood, Blades and Bullets, as well as The Fugitives, and as you heard just there, the third one coming. And I suppose he's always got more and more subject matter worth covering, as we probably have not heard the end of the Glebelands Hostel story. Still to come here.